Hi everyone, I'm Sloan from SloanBella.com and I'm back with another channeled celebrity video. This one hit me like a ton of bricks this morning, and so I was out running and I was waiting for somebody to come through, the people on my list that I wanted to channel that you guys asked me about, and nobody, like radio silence, nothing, okay? So I come home, I'm taking a shower, and suddenly people are popping up in my bathroom. It must be the place to be, but I think it's because like I'm not thinking of anything or even trying to think of anything, except maybe how to shave my legs. But I stepped out of the shower, my phone went on, it started playing music from this particular band, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. So I was blow drying my hair and I was putting on my makeup, and he stepped right in front of me. Now, if you've listened to any of my radio shows or TV shows that I've done about other musicians that have been deceased, passed over, they always ask me who I like to listen to as a kid, especially a lot of hosts that are really into the music genres. So I have always said I had two bands I listened to, and this was by the time I was age 10, okay, so pretty young. One of them was the Bay City Rollers, a Scottish band that probably none of you have heard of unless you happen to be in the UK or Canada or somewhere like that. I love the freaking Bay City Rollers. And then, I know, don't repeat that. Well, actually repeat it. It's great. It was like eclectic music taste. The other band that I loved and got teased about as a kid because this band's name was such a play on words was Queen. And I'm channeling Freddie Mercury. Yay! I was so excited, but I will warn you, the energy's a little bit darker or a little bit more intense or a little bit more philosophical than I anticipated it being. So I wanted to start with his astrology, because I always have to. And anyway, I know Freddie Mercury's astrology because I've been obsessed with him for years. I just never thought he was going to come through. Okay, so his birthday is September 5th, 1946. You know how I love the men born in the 46. I think I'm from that genre, and I probably died and came back. I can't remember that past life, but I go back to one before that. But I freaking love all the musicians that would be in their 70s right now. I am a huge fan of. And just absolutely love it. Love that genre of coming up in the 40s and the music that was displayed when they were young. It's just so, it's so reminiscent of everything in my life at that time. And as it is for all of you guys who love the band Queen. I mean, Queen is multi-dimensional as far as the generations that it affects. It's absolutely amazing. Little kids, my kids were raised on it. You know, kids being born now will be raised on it. It's just everywhere. But let's get back to Freddie Mercury. Okay, so he was a September 5th, 1946, and he died on November 24th, 1991, and I remember it. He finally died from the disease AIDS, which we all knew he had. It was kind of like a Rock Hudson thing, the best kept secret in town. However, he wanted his privacy, and it's his life, even though he was a public person. So when I looked at Freddie's chart, he's a double Virgo with a Sagittarius moon. That's probably why he came through all the Sag energy. Okay, so when you look to a sign that's a double sign, you look to see if the sign is behind the horizon or below the horizon to tell you how that sign is operating on a spiritual level. So Freddie's sun was placed in the 12th house. He had basically a bunch of planets in the 12th house. And what that means for somebody like him, he had his Virgo and Leo planets in the 12th. I have a loaded 12th house too. For you psychic types out there, for your mediumship types, for your people locked in mental hospitals, don't yell at me for saying that, but it's true. Your drug addict types, loaded 12th house is one of the things. And also a prominently placed Neptune in the chart. Because these are things that go between the psychic realm and the drug realm and the insane realm. Because remember, on the earth realm, it's like a very logical place. And on the psychic realm, nothing is explainable unless you've experienced. So it's more of a faith-based thing. So anyway, Freddie Mercury had also very prominently a wide conjunction, but it was both his Pluto and Saturn in Leo in the 12th house. Just popping into the 12th house with the Saturn, okay? What is fascinating about that is his past life karma totally hooked up into this life with his sun in the 12th, meaning both his success on a spiritual level and a soul level and what he came specifically to work out. Remember, loaded 12th house people are basically sadomasochistic. They're being born on into this world with a whole bunch of shit they're cleaning up from several lifetimes in the past. So Freddie was a lot like that. But he had his karmic movement and his path in tandem. So Pluto, what is Pluto? Pluto in Leo actually is kind of, Pluto is the planet that Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. Pluto is absolutely life altering when it hits an access point in your chart or an angle or on a personal planet, because it will rip everything up the way that you knew it conventionally, toss it over there, flip your world upside down, rip your guts out, stomp on you, throw you against the wall, and then ask you to build yourself back up. Saturn in Leo is saying you have a karmic responsibility to do this. You need to do this because you didn't do it. You left your past life with a desire line, because remember, it's up in the 12th. Also, for just really brief, Saturn in the 12th is the sign of a writer. So if any of you have Saturn placed in your 12th house, remember, you have the gift of writing. And that could be musically like Freddie Mercury. That could be in any other way you want to put it. Writing books, novels, blogs, however you want to word that. Freddie also had Neptune and Jupiter and Venus coming into his second house. So you know that he made money off his beauty, and he was a prancer. He also would have opened himself up worldwide. But I want to go back. He wants me to skip that shit. Okay. Like he's like, skip that shit. When he showed up in my bathroom, I'm not joking. He kind of showed up, really, I almost want to say Mae West-like he wasn't dressed like Mae West. That's not what I mean. But he showed up with one of those long cigarette holders, and he was like this with it. Okay. So he was like talking to me like that. Like it was almost like we were going to sit down. And I could see him sitting there on this leather chair in this library, and we were about to watch a movie. He wanted to show me a movie. So he's very pictorial in his conveyance of what he is like on the other side. So this leather chair that he's sitting on with this long, I want to say cigar holder, but cigarette, cigar, whatever. And he's sitting there, and he just loved the theatrics of it. And he's sitting there, and he wanted me to join him, and up popped this screen. And he's showing me his early life as a child, which I love to get into. That Leo side of him, meaning the Pluto and the Saturn in Leo, he went back to the childhood. And I'm going to use the word pain. He was an extremely lonely child. This is what he's saying to me. He's also saying that he was passed around by his family as a child. And I don't know what he means by passed around. I know that he was raised in a boarding school. I get boarding schools. It's a British thing. And he was, I think he was from Tanzania, but raised in India, raised in London, whatever. It's very Brit-like. Like if you have British parents, you're probably ending up in a boarding school. It's both a status thing, and they don't have to deal with you because, you know how the British are. They don't wash their hands of their kids. I'm talking back in the day. Don't yell at me if you're from England right now or whatever. But anyway, he's talking about that. He's talking about being very lonely as a child. And he's kind of interesting because he is talking also at that young age, recognizing that he had the power to pull people in and draw them to him. He was very musically inclined even as a young man. And he was also very, very interested in the human body, the workings of the human body, and basically the art of sexual magic is what he's telling me at a very young age. So this boy was exploratory on a sexual level, which is weird for a Virgo because the more Virgo you have, the more OCD you have, as you know. Anybody with Virgo planets prominent in their chart knows that they're a little bit like, I need to wash my hands. I'm not going to do this. But he also elevated himself above that where he could see the power in the sexuality. He knew this as a little kid, which to me, understanding, okay, so when I look into the energy of people that have been in the sex industry, and even myself, a former underage sex worker kind of person, when you look at that energy, there is childhood abuse to begin with. Now, because you're so aware of the sexualness of the human condition, because it's been shown to you. Kids that aren't open to that haven't seen that. If you see it in childhood, you begin to know your power with it. And he's kind of showing me that. He knows his power. He knows that if he does this, he can get power. But he's talking from it in a little bit of a different sense. It's almost like it is a sexual magic thing. And I think I'm talking about 11 through 15-year-old at this time. And he's saying that he kind of connected with men very strongly at that point because he was around so many men in his boarding school that he drew an attachment to them, but it could have very easily been women or men. He's not saying he wasn't gay, but he's saying on a sexual level, he could go either way. He didn't mind having sex with women, and he didn't not mind having sex with women, but he really, really, really connected with the male spirit, and he wanted to connect with that. But that goes back, he shows me, to the age of 3 and what went on in his family, and the disconnect between his mother and his father, and this huge split. He opens it like the floor splits open for me, and he shows me. As a little kid, he was quite happy. You know what I really love about him? And I told him this in my head telepathically. I really love the fact that he never fixed his teeth. Really loved it, because I asked him about that because of all of the, you know, things that, I don't know, people do to be attractive, when it's actually, as a Virgo, he didn't fix his imperfections, okay? And it had nothing to do with his singing voice, which has been reported formally, is what he's telling me. It had nothing to do with that. It actually had to do with the fact that he was secure in his looks, because they told him that that was part of his charm. So he knew when he went out publicly and opened his throat chakra with that voice and those octaves, his range was incredible. And I might add, because I'm so loving the 70s right now, loving it. I mean, obviously I'm a kid of the 80s, but the 70s is the musical influence, and he's the beginning of that glam rock. Like, who doesn't fucking love somebody with long hair and the bell bottoms coming out on stage, and then that Leo style, okay? So he really elevated it, but it's interesting because it's coming from the other side. He is so hooked up to the other side, and he was very aware. Now, he stops me dead in my sentence here, dead, like dead in my path, what I'm trying to say. Pulls my mind to the age of 23, okay? So I go right to the age of 23. I see him wandering around. I think it's the streets of London. He's like wandering around, and he's looking, and he's doing stuff, and he's contemplating his life, and he's showing me that he's connected to the other side. He's hearing voices, and I don't mean in a schizophrenic way, although that is psychic too, but I can't get into that right now. He's hearing voices, and he's kind of getting a feel like what he should be doing coming up, like what should I be doing? And they're talking to him, and he's telling me he's making these arrangements. A lot of his music was the struggle between side A and side B with him. He was truly split down the middle. Not as a musician, he was incredible. And by the way, I'm hearing to tell you this right now. Okay, don't shoot the messenger here. He does not like the movie that was made about him. He doesn't like the person who played him. That's not him. The guy may have done a great job. He does not like that person. Did not want that person to play him. The authenticity of that person, that shouldn't have been who played him, is what he's saying. Something about the heart. This person had no heart and no depth, although was a good actor, but he kind of wanted somebody else to play him, even if they didn't look like him, who could feel like him. And he said this person, they're diametrically opposed, diametrically different. He understands, though, that I guess it is what it is. He is also saying that when he heard this voice when he was 23, which he'd heard when he was 11, he goes back to 11 to 23, and he'd agreed to kind of combine energies with them in a spirit sense. So his success, he bases on that. But he says he was a lonely man inside. He was a lonely man. He gets right. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I'm talking about being lonely, and then he throws me into his sex life right there. Okay, so he throws me right into his sex life, and he learned how to transform energy through the sexual act. So he actually, on a certain level, was able to connect sexually with people. These are his sex partners, and he had many because he kind of looked at the world. Okay, I'm going to say something just like bizarre. But if you get a really heavy person and you ask them why they got so heavy, they'll tell you they never met a donut they didn't like. He never met a man he didn't like, and or a woman that he wanted to explore things with sexually. Okay, he just never met that. And for some reason, this is weird. He says except one man, and I'm going to go out. Okay, here we go. He literally wanted to slap the shit out of Prince Charles, Princess Diana's husband. Slap the crap out of him is what he's saying. Didn't like that man. Don't care what they said. Don't care what behind the scenes. Don't care if he met him or knew him. I don't even know if he knew him. I know he knew Princess Di, but when I'm talking about men that he didn't like, he's literally showing me slapping the shit out of Prince Charles. That's what I just got right now. Very strange. Anyway, he's showing me the sexual energy, and here's what I'm seeing. I'm going to try to describe it. I've seen it with another musician once before, and this person actually passed away doing this, but he went in. Okay, so when you feel the energy of somebody, it's like a blanket that consumes you. You are consumed, and they approach you differently. When he was in the midst of sex, actually the sex act, and he did a lot of things, not just like strange things, but downright not right things, okay? To try to elevate himself on a sexual level, to grab that energy. So another example in modern day terms is you see a lot of people at the gym and they take a lot of supplements and they take a lot of things like this, and they do a lot of that, and some of them shoot up steroids all the time. You can think of Arnold Schwarzenegger with that, and they have these big bodies and they stand there and they're like, I'm powerful. You're not really powerful because you're altering your body through artificial means. This is what he was doing with the sexual energy, okay? He's kind of showing me that. He was taking the energy of his partners and actually pulling it into his and kind of keeping it with him. So when he stepped on stage, let's say he slept with 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, whatever, who hasn't been there as a teenager, right? But anyway, let's say he just did that. He pulls that energy with him and he pulls it through the solar plexus and he pulls you into him. So what you're feeling when you're looking at him, besides his amazing musical talent, okay, his amazing voice, just the range of his voice and the dynamic of his voice, he's pulling you right into him. And he's also saying that there were a lot of times that his ego got in the way with that because he felt he was supposed to. I see this Mae West character, like it's weird, kind of, he's half Mae West, weird. I also see Princess Di around him, and it's interesting because he and her talked and have talked, although I think I'm seeing in the past. But what he's saying is a lot of what happened to her is a lot of what happened to him, is a lot of what happened to people in general with the energy and the misuse and the misbelief. He allowed himself to get taken away. If you've ever done like heavy drugs and you do them, it's like a physical body kind of stone and you really don't give a shit. Like you could literally jump off a bridge because you're I'm getting dizzy. He's trying to get into the back of my crown chakra. You could like literally fall off like a bridge, jump off it, whatever, step in front of a car and you're like, oh, this feels so good. He's showing me this in this sexual thing and it gave him such power. He was into sexual magic. This is what I'm getting at. He's showing me because now he cloaks himself in a magician's cape and he steps out. I'm sorry for laughing. It's that fucking cigar holder. that Mae West long cigarette holder. I don't know why he's acquired that. But he's saying, he's jumping and he's saying a lot of his life was spent struggling with the choices he made from age 11 to 23 and how he was going to get out of it. In the end of his life, and I will say this, when he was getting ready to pass away and cross over, he was fucking terrified, okay? So he was actually terrified. He died in peace, but was terrified on the way up to it because he didn't know who he was. So his faith had been stopped. His faith had been stopped. So he didn't have the same kind of ability to see things from a faith standpoint. And boy, oh boy, am I getting dizzy here. Sometimes what they do, he's wanting to step into my body. What they do when they want to step into your body is they kind of come here and it makes you like dizzy like this, like you're like, woo, and then you kind of like pass out and they get in, but I don't let them in. So I'm telling him telepathically in my head. I'm telling him mentally, but it's telepathy when you communicate with them when you're out on the astral. He's still out there. Great sadness for his mother. Great sadness for his mother, though. I don't know if he's seen her. I don't even know if she's dead, but great sadness for the mother. This something that she went through was heartbreaking for him. Heartbreaking for him. I'm also seeing that he was incredibly smart. And for being a double Virgo, he wasn't actually as critical with other people as he was with himself. But energetically, if he didn't like you, you got pushed the fuck way over there. I also see with him his little Sag moon, which is the bachelor moon, by the way. So anybody out there with a Sagittarius moon has an emotional need to keep themselves in line with freedom on an emotional level. So unless you can find a relationship that allows you to be emotionally free, and he talks about his wife at that time. Yes, I know he was gay, but the girlfriend that then became his wife in name, okay, in friendship, he I don't know if she's dead or alive either. He holds her hand like this, like he was allowed emotional freedom with her. That's why he gave back to her. He was allowed to be who he was emotionally, and they shared unconditional love. He actually puts a huge heart around them. I can see her face. I'm not even sure what they look like. He loved her instantly when he saw her. Now keep in mind, a spiritual love when you see somebody, and a sexual love of the human physicality body is one thing. And when he's talking about connecting with her, he saw her on a soul level, but his direction had already been formed in this life that he wanted men. And boy, did Freddie could actually feel the connection between himself and his wife, even if it wasn't a sexual connection. It was a spiritual connection. And I believe her name is Mary Austin. I hope I'm saying that right. Anyway, his connection to her, and I don't know her sign. I'm gonna have to look that up after. I didn't look it up. But her, the energy between the two of them, he could see her as a soul. And for everything that he'd done on this side, his connection to her was through the crown chakra. It was pure and it was intense, and he loved her like no other. Now he does go like this with some of the other band members for their behavior of her. And I don't know what that means. It's after his death, and he wasn't necessarily enjoying watching or being around that, but it's human nature is what he's telling me. And it's also human nature to want to be seen. Now he is showing me that when he rose to fame, he's showing me the energy of the band, and he's saying, okay, he's showing me all kinds of energy that he did to elevate himself on a soul level. I had to close my eyes there because I was getting a bit dizzy. And he opened, I'm almost going to say, a porthole into the public. So he had energy coming from behind him, pushing through him. He equated his sexual connections with this. So every time he was sexual with somebody, and I'm sure there was just fuck buddies and stuff like this, but every time he was sexual, he took it very seriously. And I'm going to I have to make food analogies. If you've ever gone into a restaurant and you've seen a person that's really enthralled with food, and they will do it like a ritual, they'll put their bib on, they'll get their special silverware on, they'll get their teacup out, and they will devour that meal in such a way that you almost feel like indignant watching them, because it's like, oh my God, should I be looking at that? This is how he consumed sex. It was very much addictive to him, but it was on an energetic level. So when he performed, he came from that way, just that feel to it. Also, a lot of the music that he sang about was his internal struggle between good and bad and good and bad and everything that had gone on before. So there's such power behind what he did. And he's saying, I was just a human being. And now he is showing me that the karma from the past 2 lives with him, and the desire line that he had in those lifetimes to be seen as an entertainer, was why he pushed it through. So in this life, he was born with an energy of how bad do you want it? Because in past lives, he'd given up the limelight for some reason or another. Maybe family, maybe money, maybe kids, whatever it is. I'm not really seeing that, but he had tossed the limelight to the side and died with a desire line. He had died with a need and a desire to complete it. So the body left the life with this intense feeling of like regret, like I never did this. In this life, when he was born, he's like, I'm going to do this at the expense of everything else that goes on around me. This is what he's saying. So this is why he was born into this. And I do love the fact that this critical Virgo energy with the Sag moon, I love Sag moon. They're really fun. He had a lot of fun. He played a lot of pranks. He did a lot of things. He bounced in and out, and he considered himself quite the funny guy in a lot of ways, and then internally quite serious. Virgo can go quite inward, but it's because they're intuitively picking up on energy around them. So he had a lot of that. But I love the fact that his Virgo energy, and he's saying this, if he leaves behind a legacy of anything, because it was very tough on him in this life to see his imperfections and the imperfection of the soul. He wanted to be beautiful. I mean, he was a beautiful man, but he had that odd buck teeth. I kind of get the bucky teeth. I had bucky teeth as a kid. And mine still buck out at times, and you can't even notice it, and it drives me insane. But he did not mind that. And as he aged, I see him looking in the mirror, and he had an acceptance of his age that was infectious, although I'm sure secretly it bothered him. And as he got AIDS, now this is interesting. He's speaking of AIDS, and he said that came out of left field. So left field, and he's showing me over here. He can see the AIDS. He can see the AIDS. I don't mean it like that. What I'm saying is he can see the invention, the inception of the disease AIDS, HIV. He can see it, and it was definitely concocted, is what he's telling me. And he's going over here behind closed doors with a bunch of scientists. He's actually showing me this, with a bunch of scientists with a white coats on, and petri dishes all over the place, and cages and cages and cages of animals, okay, and cages of kids, is what he's saying. They are infecting the babies. I don't know why I want to say that, but they're putting this petri dishes things into these animals and kids over here. This is what he's showing me. I don't know if he's telling me like they're literally putting it into the kids, or they wanted to take the kids out, meaning young people who were going to have sex and experiment. But he's basically saying that the freedom of the 60s, the sex, love, drugs, rock and roll, which was, hey, okay with me, although I wasn't born, at that time. But anyway, he's saying that mindset was brought in and kind of energetically put onto the population to see who would follow it and who wouldn't. And as soon as people started to go into that mindset, they started to make this drugs over here. Okay, so, oh my God, can you see it getting blurry? That's him. He just like literally stepped across as I'm pointing over here. I have to fix this. Hold on. Okay, weirdly, he just walked in front of the camera. He's like, if you won't let me in, literally, he's opening a door. Like, if you won't let me in, I'm going to walk in front of. Okay, stage left, fucking walk right in front of the camera. Hilarious. Quite the prankster. He's over there now. I kind of have scolded him. He liked to be scolded, actually. It might be one of his things. He might have liked to have been spanked too. Okay, sorry, I digress. He's showing me the invention of HIV, AIDS, but it actually goes back before the 60s. He's going backwards. He's going into 1928 and onward as a way. What he's telling me energetically, and he's working above himself. He's showing me that in the 20s, the 1920s, that energetically, this is just how I'm going to word it, or outside of the physical realm, that they were working and planning these different decades, and souls were lining up to come through, to be born, to experience this. So he's basically showing me that when we incarnate down here, I've never heard this before, that we pick decades and genres with which to express our soul energy based on the concept. He's almost making me feel like we really are in a video game. He's the first one to make me feel that way, or maybe he feels that way. I'm not sure. I'm actually getting quite the fuzzy head right now though, so I'm going to sign off for now. I'm going to come back with more videos from Freddie, because who doesn't want to talk to Freddie Mercury if he allows me? I'm going to word it that way. I'm just going to say if he allows me. But it has been such a pleasure. I'm like up and down, and I'm so excited. And I'm going to give a shout out to the Bay City Rollers too. I got to look them up and see where they are, if they're here, there, or wherever. I can literally feel him. He's standing behind me now, trying to come through my head. That's an energetic expression, not a literal expression. And once again, my name is Sloan from SloanBella.com.